Hey, how's it going once again? Welcome to the Level Up podcast. Level Up was developed to facilitate challenging, real, and raw conversations with minorities about their unique experiences in the workforce. And today we have on the test, we got Adam Weber, Chief People Officer and co-founder of Emplify. And he's going to be double clicking into how to lead like a human in his words. What's going on, Adam?
Hey, not too much, Demetrius. Good to be with you today. Thanks for the time. Thanks for having me.
Man, it's thank you for being here. You know, it's a blessing to have you here, man. Really incredible backstory, super interesting guy. Not the HR guy that you envisioned, but definitely a necessary one, especially moving forward. Before I can get into the LinkedIn version of your background, could you kind of soliloquy a little bit about your backstory and what led you to your career and what you are in now at Emplify, and when you first became aware that this was something that you want to do?
Yeah, I can give you the kind of high level. I think it'd probably take the whole podcast if I gave you my bio, mostly because I
Yeah, you
wandered
can
around for
microwave it.
I wandered around for the first 10 years of my career. You know, I was a musician, and because of that, I got a job at a brand new church right out of college. I was 22, and I was leading music, and then we went from about 15 people to 250 people, and over the course of just I talk about this in the book, but basically just through a poor decision of the other person on a 2-person staff, I overnight became the head pastor of a church, 250 people, never given a sermon in my life. And that's where my career started. And through that experience, I think I learned a lot about myself. And I learned a lot about, like, that was probably the first time I've ever really been pushed or stretched. But did that, got pretty burnt out. I'll spare you all the details, but and then kind of worked at a university for a little while. I got into sales. And then about 8 years ago, after getting into sales and I started figuring out how to make money for other people, I started to go, now, couldn't I just do this for myself? And so I started a mobile app development company about 8 years ago, built it with my business partner today. We built and sold it. And I think during that time, I started to realize what I really cared about. And it gave me the freedom to go, what has my life actually been about? And kind of that common thread through all of it was like, I like looking at a person and seeing, like, what are you actually capable of, and then helping them become that. And so that's kind of this natural transition and spot where I'm in now, where I get to lead an employee engagement company, both as the chief people officer, so create those processes internally, but also like try to be that resource for other companies too. Try to do innovative practices, like you said, that other companies can lean on, and try to push the envelope of what it looks like to be a human-centric leader today. That's me. That's me in a nutshell.
I definitely want to get to some of those points that you touched on a little bit later, but you know, it seemed like this is more of a PR stunt for you in terms of this book. You know, you start to see a lot of people, they got a lot of time now. COVID, we're all at home. Let me write a book. This doesn't seem like that's what this was for you. Could you talk about a little bit more about, you know, dive a little bit deeper into what inspired you to write this book, and really, you know, what is this book really about? You
Yeah.
know?
Well, and it was interesting too to write a book and be like 90% done before COVID hit, you know? So, and I think one of the things I started to realize when I finished it was I was like, I think everything in this is actually more true, not less true now. The reason I wrote it was because it took a lot early in my career through that journey I just laid out. I spent a lot of time pretending, and I spent a lot of time playing other roles, like being someone I'm not. I was displaying, like, even when I got into management initially, and I talk about this in the book, like, I started to be that same manager no one wants. And I was like, this isn't me. Like, the rest of my life, I'm this connected, kind, helpful person. And then now I get into management, I just turned into this monster. And I was like, basically, I wanted to write the book to show people that there is another way to lead and to give them permission to do it. And sometimes that's all people need, is just to have another example to go, oh, so you can actually lead as like a whole connected person, lead with kindness, and then still without sacrificing like productivity and performance, and like building high growth companies, that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's definitely a trade-off. I mean, especially when you start to look at those people who are in charge of hiring, you know, talent, especially when we look at diverse talent. what is that next level leader that you're hiring looks like, and how is your unconscious biases impacting a lot of that stuff? And you talked a little bit about that when you're talking about centeredness or connectedness, rather, in your book. But in the introduction of your book, you talked about unlocking your potential, and you talked about your transition from spending time at Emplify earlier on as this VP of sales, which you mentioned, to taking on more of a re-envisioned role as a chief people officer, which I think, and you just explained, is one that's a little bit more aligned to who you are and what your purpose is. Um, Speak a little bit more about that idea of unlocking your potential, and how important is that, especially in times like this?
Yeah, and kind of to go back to that chapter you referred to on centeredness, the reason I wrote that chapter was because I think too often people get business books or they listen to podcasts because they're looking for that silver bullet. They're trying to figure out, like, gosh, I'm grasping for straws. I'm in this role. I'm overwhelmed. And I just want to know, like, tactically, give me the bullets, like what to do. And like the hard truth of leadership is that there's a duality to it. Yes, there are the tactical skills that are needed to run a great one-on-one or cast a vision or be someone that is worth following, right? That's all real stuff. But the other component to leadership that's not talked about enough is that there is an internal, like when you're thrust into leadership, there is an internal change that happens to you. And if you don't do the work yourself, that personal maturity, the taking the time to actually uncover, how do I show up as a leader? Like, and the reason this happens is because as a leader, you're thrown into a stressful situation, and now these hidden parts of your personality start to manifest themselves. And how many leaders have you met that just maybe they're successful, but at what cost?
Mm-hmm.
And so true leadership is that duality. It's getting to know yourself well, how you're showing up so that you're aware of it. And so that now as I use these good tactics, I'm also moving through my organization, leading my people in a way that is effective and beneficial. It's the phrase I use is like, it's not just what I do. So it's not like, did I accomplish these things? It's also, how did I do it as well?
And how that impacts other people. I think in football, they call that situational and positional awareness, understanding where you are on the field and who's around you, where your supports are, who you need to support in a leadership function. It's super important, but that doesn't happen without that centeredness, that connectedness, that inner work, that efficacy that one must perform on themselves to understand who I am. You know that, right. Which interestingly is not as apparent. And what I've learned is, in terms of in leadership across, I mean, it's harder or less apparent. A lot of leaders know who they are, but it changes. Like, you made that every single day. I mean, I had a couple of friends who just had kids. That changes, every single day. These life events definitely impact the way that you lead and the way that you show up. So that's definitely something that you should be cognizant of, and one of the ways I think that Emplify is trying to do that, and I want you to speak a little bit more into this, is you're innovating HR, one of the spaces that hadn't necessarily been innovated.
Right.
And innovating the people space, turning, your people operations team into like this sort of innovation lab. Could you speak a little bit more about how you're reimagining your workspace in that function?
Yeah, that is it. You worded it well. I mean, essentially, HR needed disrupted massively. I mean, it's a dated, and because it needed disrupted massively because the workforce was disrupted already, and what employees value has fundamentally shifted. Like 20 years ago, you could build an HR team that was around payroll, benefits, administrative, legal. Well, or Gen Z, or like, if those things matter, they don't matter like things like leadership authenticity, the purpose and values of the business, the skill, am I gaining new skills? And so HR, or I call it people ops, was ready to be disrupted. It needed to make that transformation to say, do we have a section of our business that is dedicated to those aspects, the things that actually matter the very most to our people? And so, at Emplify, like with our role, I call it the people lab, because people look to employee engagement companies. So to try innovative things, and then we share our successes, we share our failures. We're really open and transparent about the work that we're doing, how we're communicating to our employees. And then our product, what it does, it's engagement measurement. So it like actually measures engagement for companies. And then so leaders aren't going off of gut feel, which is what they've done for forever. They just go, I'm listening to the loudest voices, instead of like, but what is actually blocking your people from showing up and bringing their best self to work every day? And now, like, any business should be able to have that science and data and visibility, so that a leader can make decisions that feel like it's in alignment with the employee base.
That's what my grandmother calls, not necessarily thinking to try to fix the sink when the well is broken.
Yeah.
I think how we really effectuate, truly leveraging all the levers of our business to effectuate change. I thought that was super interesting, because you don't see that a lot. I mean, that's little of like a big little moment, or aha, like, how are we really leveraging this innovation wing? It's been like a sexy word that everybody's been throwing around and throwing through the mud, but really every part of your business can be innovated. And this thought process of continuous improvement in that innovation, how are you guys building on that?
Yeah. Well, right now, I mean, just to bring you real time into the world, like what we're working on, and we view everything very holistically, being an engagement company. So like right now we're building what we call the Leadership Development Academy. That's top of mind for us. And we're trying to think through that duality. What are the practical skills that it means to be a leader, not just a manager, but a leader? So how do you incite change inside of an organization? And then what are the soft skills that a person needs to develop as well to be on that journey? And so we're building curriculum internally for our team. We think it'll be one of the most innovative leadership development academies in the country. And our thought is, then once that's completed, that's really where we'll start to share what, like, open source it and like share it with other companies, integrated into our product, so that it's something that people can actually like participate in and be a part of.
This is amazing. And using products to lift and thrust your business, and using those same products to lift and thrust other ones.
Exactly.
That is so. I wish I would have thought about that.
It's like the Matrix. It's all like intertwined and connected. The whole thing is.
Who else to try it on other than yourself, right? I think that's really great. And not to get too heavy, but we have to definitely talk. There's two different pandemics going on right now. We have this COVID situation that at this time, I don't know, we're in our second resurgence of it, is coming back roaring again. And then we have this civil rights, this emergence of new civil rights. As we start to have conversations around these very two different things, and I'll start with the pandemic of COVID first. What are some of the things you guys are doing that are interesting at Emplify that is helping you navigate COVID and from a work perspective?
Yeah, well, I'm really glad I like that we're talking about the real stuff, by the way. So I'm glad we're going to talk about both these two topics.
We nothing else. This is what we're going to get on level.
I like it. I think with COVID, there's a couple things. I think this is really that transparent, authentic leadership. I think the main thing that we're communicating to people is there is no playbook, right? So that the how side is not as relevant anymore, like for in these situations. So what really matters is, like, as a leader, how do you thoughtfully make decisions? Do you have a system of both consuming inputs, but also giving yourself space to make those decisions, so that when you make them, then are you transparently sharing back to the company why you're making the decisions? Like, there's just a reality in times like this, like we are, as a leader, you'll have to make decisions that maybe your employees don't agree with. And so, but if you're willing to peel back the curtain, share the why behind decisions, employees largely will be more willing to like understand, like, as a leader, you have to make hard decisions. I think the other thing, we went from being our in-person office was a big part of our culture. We were a team that everybody worked at our headquarters. And then after Tom Hanks Day or whatever you call it, like it was basically a combo of Tom Hanks and the NBA all in one day. We have never gone back to our office since. We're fully remote. And so I think the other thing, just from like a people perspective, is like, how do you, there are parts that have been really seamless for us, you know, like we all have internet, and it's easy to, like, we're an internet company. It's easy to do that. Some of the things that have been harder are like collaboration. I think resolving conflict, like small conflicts, are harder because you don't have that moment of kindness in the hallway where you just sort of see each other. I think in the beginning, people were excited to try to recreate the office, meeting up at Zoom all the time. People are getting tired of that. And so we're having to think through new creative ways to, like, how do you still build authentic culture and community inside of a place that's fully remote?
Can you speak to some of those things without giving away your whole book?
Yeah, well, I mean, I try to just give away my whole playbook too. So I've posted some of the different things I'm doing, and have resources I can share out if any of your listeners are curious. So,
Sure.
you know, probably some of the, like, one of the things, for example, just a really simple example is like large group Zooms, like happy hours. I don't find effective anymore. Small creative breakouts where you get everybody together and then use breakouts and do creative questions that still build personal relationships, much more effective. I think team wide, one of the critical things we're working on right now is, like, at the team level, make sure that as a leader, for example, that you are intentionally still finding out personal things about the employees. Like, what is going on in your life? Because there's this whole life that is existing outside of the work. And that part happens really naturally in offices, but it takes a little bit of discipline when you're in the remote environment as well.
Definitely, and that's some really good feedback, and I'm sure our listeners will definitely appreciate trying to understand how to navigate this a little bit better, especially as we move forward. I think at a certain point, we all thought we had our finger on this thing, but 2020 for you, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That
It's
is
funny. Is one of my team members this week was, like, trying to schedule a meeting for the week of August 37th. And I was like, that's the most 2020 thing ever. Like, it's just like each month is like 60 days right now.
Man, August 20, that is crazy.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. I don't even know how does that happen? Was that like a something with the computer?
She meant to say 27th. She said 37th. And I was like, I think that was just 2020 just doing what it wanted to do, you know?
Yeah. I guess I guess we can kind of, like, talk a little bit about some of this stuff that's happening with the this resurgence of civil rights movement.
Yeah.
What are how are you guys easing into some of these conversations, or just having them outright with your associates, or like allyship?
Yeah.
I know we talked about connectedness a little bit earlier, but I think that definitely has not connectedness, centeredness a little bit earlier. And I think that definitely has a space in this conversation too.
Yeah, it really does. And I think that role of the ally is one that is a critical role to, like, take to be active with. I haven't experienced this, you know, I haven't experienced racism firsthand. I have observed it. But when you have been an observer, you have a responsibility, right? To be proactive, not just a passive, or not just saying I'm doing well, you know, good enough. And it was personal to me because, and I talk about it in the book, but I had a black foster brother growing up in a all white town and experienced firsthand that, like, the playing field was not even for the two of us. And so my experience was not his experience, but I did see it happen to him. And I think that there's a responsibility there when you experience things like that. And, you know, for us, I would also like to say, like, as a business, I want to be on the front end of things like this before they're political, where we're doing a better job, like pushing things forward before there's before the media is basically pushing people to do things. So, you know, practically for us, I think the Leadership Development Academy, there's a lot of things we're doing inside of that to push diversity and inclusion. Both there's a to it, like, for example, interview training and implicit bias, and how we do implicit bias training. There's the other component, which is, like, one of the ways to move people that are in minority groups into leaders, you have to put them, like, especially younger people in the workforce or people with like who are more at entry level roles, getting them on a leadership development track early so that we can actually generate and create the pipeline. Like, that is an important part, I think, an important, really practical role we can play. We are a couple practical things we're doing internally. We're having conversations. So we're doing pretty open, like book studies together as a group. And that's one of the remote ways we're building relationships too, just like having a conversation about it. One of the employees we've been leaning on a lot during this, he's like, his comment, he says, we're going to bend toward action, right? As opposed to being afraid that we're going to do the wrong thing. We're going to just keep pushing forward with action. The other one that is like top of mind is we have set, and I think this is a big one for companies, is we have set metrics for our interview and hiring and recruitment process. Because one of the realities is, like, without intentionality, that we're not going to make meaningful progress in creating a diverse workforce. And so we have put clear metrics that we've exposed to the company on what percentage of minority groups, like, do we expect to be at each stage of the hiring process. And then we're reporting back our progress too. So we're held accountable as a people ops team to that progress. So that's just a handful of the things that we're working on.
If you don't mind, just kind of double clicking into that. Because I hear a lot of leaders talking about, especially around the HR, talking about they are now instituting these metrics, because it was really not a cool thing to talk about those metrics. I mean, men and women, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Diverse versus white, yeah. But how much do you double click into those metrics? Are you talking a percentage of Black, a percentage of Asian, a percentage of Latino? Is that how deep those metrics go?
So from on the hiring part specifically that I'm talking about, it does not go that deep. Okay. It is looking for like underrepresented groups and then what percentage. Now on the flip side though, like if you look at like our actual tool and what we measure for companies, you can actually go much deeper because you can inside of our tool. So for the actual employee base, we do, you can look at different ethnicities, and like one of the drivers we look at is fairness inside of an org. And so from the employee's perspective, what is the perception of fairness and how decisions are made as an org? And you can look by whether, different like racial groups, it can be by men, women, it can, all of those layers as well. And then one other thing just to add, just for your listeners, because on this topic, we also in the last built a free diversity and inclusion assessment, because if you're a leader and you're listening and you're trying to solve this on your own, my first piece of advice would be just talk to your people. Ask your employees in general what their perspective is on this, and make sure you understand how they think you're doing. And so we built a scientifically valid, it's like a 10-question assessment that goes out to the employee base on the topic specifically of diversity and inclusion. It takes like 5 minutes to sign up for, and totally free and everything.
I would definitely be taking that. And that was a great call to action. So I guess we'll close by asking you, where could I get your book for those who are listening? Where could we go and purchase this man's book and get him and keep him at number one?
Well, I appreciate that. It's so just go to Amazon.com and then Lead Like a Human is the name of the book. So just search for the book and it's right there. It's on Kindle and paperback as well. So, and I really appreciate it. I appreciate the conversation and thank you for having me.
Man, I appreciate your energy, man. We've been going no rep nonstop. So it's really nice to be able to have folks like you to be able to talk to and energize me in the morning. And I guess I'll close out with this. Thank you once again. Thank you, Adam, for sitting on the couch with us and really sharing with us some of the things that you guys have going on in Emplify, and also about your amazing backstory and why you do what you do and how to lead like a human. To the listeners, thank you for tuning in once again. Until next time, leave a comment, like, subscribe to the channel, and smash that share button if you can. #level up.